Hi everybody, my name is Spencer. I run Gocher's Cards up here in Northeast Oklahoma. Recently did a discussion video, my first one, talking about PSA 1 slabs. If you haven't had an opportunity to watch that video yet, highly recommend it. It's got decent engagement for a channel of my size, aka a very small channel. But tonight I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about growing your dream card collection, how I did it in my first year here doing shows and selling locally in the market. And I wanted to give you some pointers if you maybe you're wanting to do the same, but you're on a budget and you don't really know where to start. So keep in mind, guys, there, and I'm going to be referencing some notes on my screen. If you see me look down, that's why. But there are a million ways to get started increasing the value of your Pokemon collection without having to be, a millionaire in order to do it. So I'm going to tell you how I did it, give you a few steps, follow some if you like, do the complete opposite if you prefer, just follow along and enjoy. So let's go over the basics first off. This is a flipping side hustle, okay? When you are doing this, you've got to do it off of margins. Some people don't like that; they take offense to it. But if you're wanting to increase your card collection without having to put the money from your 9 to 5 into it, it does require you to flip. So the basics of flipping: find a budget that you are comfortable working with, and stick to that budget. I recommend starting with at least $100 minimum. I've seen people do this, like with a $1 challenge, or even some people have done it with $50, and I've followed along their journey and they pull it off. I would say start with at least $100. I started with $250 when I decided that I was going to try to steadily increase the value of my collection without dipping into my bank account. And to be upfront and honest with you, the way that I started it out, I bought a PSA 6 Charizard locally here in Tulsa, Oklahoma for $200, and I sold it to a guy the same day that I bought it for $250. And that's how I knew that I could flip for reasonable rates and increase my own card collection value, because I got a $50 jump like that. And it's not a lot of money. Keep in mind, it's just $50, but it's $50 that I didn't have to take out of my checking or savings account in order to put towards Pokemon, right? Um, my second bit of advice: work with stuff you are interested in. Don't start off by working with stuff you don't have any interest in. Eventually you might get there. I'm currently there. I keep stuff, on my vendor table and in my Zion case that I don't have any interest in having in my personal collection, but that's because I did pretty well this year and felt like I grew enough that I could do it. You may be stuck with stuff that you buy for a while, and you may get aggravated at having that stuff sit around if you don't appreciate looking at it yourself. So I highly recommend, when you're first starting out, be willing to hang on to stuff until it sells. Number 3, when you're working with buying cards, look at percentages rather than just the straight dollar value. And be aware what you actually spent, but make sure you offer competitive rates. Don't be the guy that everybody's talking about in their circles that is offering such low rates that you're kind of the clown of the community. But also make sure that you buy at a certain rate that you're not going to lose if the card drops a little bit in the market, okay? Be willing to explain why you offer a certain percentage that you do if you're asked. It's okay for people to ask. And you can have a really good answer for this. My answer is, look, markets go up and they go down. I need to buy at a percentage where I'm not going to lose because I'm buying stuff for resale. I'm very upfront about that. I don't try to hide it. But I also remind people I'm strong enough in my offer that you're not going to get a better offer at a local card store, right? But you still get the convenience of getting fast cash. So it's the nature of flipping. Somebody is going to get something for a good deal in order to resell, and all parties need to be aware of that whenever you're doing this type of business. But you can remind people, look, you get straight up cash from me. You don't have to do the legwork, in order to sell the item. You can sell your item for more by not selling it to me and selling it yourself, but you may have to pay fees to whatever platform that you're using, or you may have to do the legwork up front to sell it on Marketplace, find a buyer, find somebody you trust, either locally or shipping, right? So you're just the fast cash option, and you're offering, a certain percentage so that you can make a buck, while at the same time giving that person an easy sale. Okay. Also, keep in mind, modern is usually more lucrative unless you're working with multi-thousand-dollar vintage. And if you're doing that, you're probably attending collectacon, and you don't need my advice or need to watch this video anyway. So this is more so for those that are just getting started out. But if you are just getting into this and you're looking at, what you should flip, modern tends to be a little bit more lucrative. It's usually a faster sale. But at the same time, going back to what I said earlier, work with what you're interested in. When I got into this, I did not take that advice. I'm a vintage guy. I like my vintage. I have a ton of it. And although it's not the fastest sell, I really don't mind having it around. Two reasons. One, it very rarely drops in value, if at all. Vintage kind of has a market where the price is the price. It's stuck at that price unless it decides to go up a little bit. But when it goes up, it really doesn't come back down much. So it's something that you can put money into and not have to worry about losing your capital on it, because it's really not going to fall. But at the same time, finding a buyer for it's a little tougher. The market's smaller, right? The most of the people that are into vintage were into Pokemon 25 years ago, and the amount of people that are still into it today is smaller than those who are either jumping in now, or maybe jumped in 5-10 years ago and aren't interested in vintage. They might be interested in mid-era stuff, but they're just not interested in vintage because there's no nostalgic factor there. So be involved with stuff you're interested in. If it's vintage, be prepared to hang on to it for a little while. But there are ways that you can move that product, and I'll go into that here in just a second. Lastly, when it comes to flipping, right, for the category of flipping, be ready and willing to hear the word no a million times over. Okay, you'll hear yes. I hear yes, which is why I still do this, but you're going to hear no a lot, because the majority of people are not looking to move their collection at margins, and that's okay. That's totally okay. You're looking for the person who is. You're not trying to convince the person who isn't to become the person who is. Okay? I am in the side hustle of flipping cards. I buy at 70% and I trade at 80%. I'm not willing to sell my cards at 70%. Why? Because I buy them at 70%. There's no reason for me to do it. I'm wasting time and money if I'm buying at 70% and selling at 70%. Okay? And I'm upfront about that. All right, let's talk about how to move product. So you need to find multiple ways in order to actually get your product moved. It's very tough to make this successful if you're only going to do one method. However, I will tell you, I only did one method for a while, and I'll get into that here in a second. But utilize whatever you're comfortable with. Be aware of what percent may come out of your profit margin when you're using certain sites. So for example, I don't use eBay unless it's a very high value item. And even then, sometimes to be honest with you, I've stopped using it altogether. But eBay's going to trim 13 to 15% of your profit margin off the top immediately. It's effective for people who are moving large volumes of product and are willing to take low percentages on that because they're moving so much. But at the same time, if you're not doing that, it's not a great method, guys. You're going to lose so much off the top, and Pokemon cards is such low margin anyway. It's hard to work with those numbers. You might come out with 5 to 8% after eBay takes their fees. And is it really worth doing over $5? Not really. Okay. So the first method that I utilize, Facebook groups. You've got the cost of business being your goods and service fee on PayPal. You can charge the buyer shipping, that's industry standard, and also learn how to do claim sales. They're very effective, particularly with what I'm doing in the vintage market. I run claim sales all the time. I say that I haven't done one in a little while. But claim sales are a very effective method. Now, they do require a lot of time and effort, but they're very effective for moving large amounts of product, especially if you'll price your stuff just a couple dollars under market price. It will get people moving, but you got to learn how to do them, okay? That's for another video. I can teach you how to do claim sales. I'm very experienced with them, but we'll move on. Another method, Facebook Marketplace. This is a fantastic place to move product. I've been experimenting a little bit. In the past, I've always posted large lots of pictures and just been like, 50 cards in one picture and just said, hey, private message me with whatever you're interested in. I noticed that my sales were slowing down a little bit, so I started posting cards one at a time, and to be honest with you, that has been pretty successful. So here's my advice. When you start selling on Facebook Marketplace, build relationships with your clientele when you meet up with them in person. These people are going to be returning customers. They might even sell to you from time to time. Giving good deals when you can and being firm when you must is totally okay, but this is how you're going to be successful doing this as a side hustle in order to increase your Pokemon collection value. Okay, when you meet up with people, don't just jump out of the car, hand them the card, take the cash, and get out of there. Okay, sit there and talk to them. Ask them what they collect. Ask them what they're interested in. Ask them how long they've been in the hobby. Ask them what they're looking for next. Get an idea of what people are interested in. Tell them if you're comfortable. Exchange contact information. I have done this repeatedly over the last year. I've been back in the game since 2015. It's currently 2025, January 2025, for those of you that are watching way later. But I've been back in the game for 10 years. I just started doing this as a side hustle for the last year, and I have met an amazing group of people locally who support my side hustle and who look to me to find stuff for their collection. And honestly, it's been fantastic. I really enjoy, working with those people. But build relationships, give good deals when you can. It will come back to you tenfold, I promise. The next one, attend local shows. This is new to me. I just started probably about 8 months ago doing shows. Travel if you're comfortable. Currently, I'm not, so I just do local shows. But know what the cost of your table is and where you have to be to make up for the table fee, your food, gas, or hotel if applicable. Shows can be a great place to move a lot of product at once, especially your high value items. And it gives you an opportunity to do trade ups. So at my table, if you come to me with product, I give you the value of what I would give you in cash. And then I also give you the value of what I give you in trade credit towards anything on my table. You get 70% in cash, you get 80% in trading credit. So you get an extra 10% bump if you just want to do trades. This is a great way to increase the value of your inventory because you're not even having to shell out cash in order to do it. Okay. Be willing, we're going to go to the next section, but be willing to work. Okay, guys, this is not something that you are going to be able to do 1 hour a week and be successful if you're legitimately trying to increase the value of your collection. This hustle is a lot of hours. If you really want to increase your collection value, you're going to have to put in some time. I'm serious when I tell you, since I decided to start doing this with intent, I put in 20, 30, sometimes 40 hours a week into this, scouring the internet for deals, attending meetups in person, doing social media, negotiating. Now I'm doing YouTube, I'm recording videos. You got to be willing to put in some effort. Attending shows, pricing cards. Oh my gosh, pricing cards takes forever because the price of cards changes literally by the hour. So whatever you had priced yesterday, if somebody messages you to buy it, you could be underpriced or overpriced, and you don't want to lose out on money, and you also don't want to look like the guy that's overcharging. So make sure that you're keeping your stuff up to date. But a lot of time goes into this. Secondly, make time for people to buy. It's not always going to be convenient for you. It has to be convenient for both parties in order to get the deal done. For example, I have somebody who, if he's watching this channel, he knows who I'm talking about. I have someone who's committed to buying quite a bit from me, but he works nights. So his availability is either 6:30 in the morning, which I did once, and I let him know I'm not a morning guy, so I probably won't be doing that again, or 11:30 p.m. at night, which we have done a few times. Now, I make sure to make time for him because I value his business. But it's not convenient for me. I'd rather be asleep at 11:30 p.m. And I can tell you I dang sure am asleep at 6:30 a.m. or just starting to wake up. I'm not ready to get in the car and go meet up at the local gas station at 6:30 in the morning. I'm just not a morning guy. It's not my thing. But I also really value the business that he brings to me, so I try to make time for him. So be aware of that. Find a way to complete the deal. You don't want that person walking to the next guy or the nearest card store and getting that card. You want to increase the value of your collection. Be willing to put in the work. Be willing to make it convenient for everybody. These inconvenient times may only be making you $5 or $10 a trip, but that's okay. It's $5 or $10 extra that you added to the value of your collection that you didn't have previously. Some of the selling methods that you utilize, almost all of them are going to take hours, many hours. For example, I was telling you about claim sales earlier with vintage cards. I do a lot of claim sales because I keep a lot of vintage and I get a lot of vintage in. They usually require me to pour somewhere between 5 and 10 hours into them, between taking photos, posting them in the sale, looking over offers, confirming orders with buyers, collecting the payment, buying labels and printing them, putting packages together, dropping them off at the post office. I mean, the list of things you have to do goes on and on and on. I don't think I included looking up prices. Oh my gosh, looking up prices takes forever for these claim sales. You have to be willing to put in the work. Be willing to put it in. It's not going to work unless you do, okay? Claim sales are a great way to get stuff sold. Putting stuff on Facebook Marketplace is a great way to get stuff sold. You can make this work. You've got to be willing to put in the effort. Next big subject, stay interested. Some people told me when I started doing this that I needed to pour every dollar I made from this back into product to resell. They even told me I need to take all of my personal collection, sell it off if I'm serious, and then put it into stuff to resell. And I'm gonna be honest, guys, I didn't take that advice at all. Now, Would it have profited me more money early and probably still now? Yeah, most definitely. If I took my entire personal collection and sold it, it would give me a lot more capital to work with for reselling, and I could work with higher value items. But to be honest with you, I don't want to do that. If this is a hobby for you, keeping a personal collection should be a priority. So the way that I stay interested is I keep a personal collection. If you want this to be a hobby and just increase the value of that collection, don't forget to reward yourself from time to time. How do you do that? Well, for me, anytime we go to a show, I try to take a little bit of the day's profits and go find something to add to my personal collection for me. It's a way that I can reward myself for the day, and it's a way that I can remind myself, hey, this is a hobby. Yeah, sometimes we go a little bit overboard with how much gets into the hobby, but it's still a hobby at the end of the day. So I continue to add to my personal collection. Every bit of what I make from this as a side hustle goes back into either stock for resale or into my own personal keepsakes. Everybody has their own reason for profiting from cards. It might be to give you some extra funds during the month, help pay the mortgage, or help pay for gas or food or whatever. But it also could be like me, purely to increase the value of that collection. So whatever it is, find a reason to stay interested and stay motivated. And finally, guys, oh, nope, sorry, I've got two more subjects. So the next one, find a friend group. This one's a big one. I didn't think it was that big until I actually started getting involved with it. This is massive. Doing this hobby solo and doing this side hustle solo, not nearly as much fun as doing it with some friends. So half the entertainment of collecting is showing off what you've gotten recently to your friends, even if it's for resale. It's even better if it's going into your personal collection, but even if it's for resale, find a group of people that love this hobby as much or more than you do so that you can talk about it weekly with them. Don't forget to share your wins with your friends. It's so much fun, and it will keep you from feeling like this is a job if you can do it with a group of people you enjoy talking to. Also keep in mind, a friend may be more well-versed in a specific era of cards than you are, and that's great. That gives you an opportunity, one, to learn from them, but also two, let's say you find some cards that somebody's willing to sell for a discount and you really don't have a lot of interest and you don't want to put $300 into it. Call your friend up, text your friend and say, hey, I found these. I know you're interested in them because this is your type of stuff. I think you'd be better suited for this and you could make a quick buck. Guess what? They're going to do the same for you whenever they find a group of cards they're not interested in, but they know that you are. It's just the nature of the business. I've got a buddy who we met over a card show. I sold some cards to him. We exchanged contact information. Now we vend together. He does that for me with vintage. I do that with him for some modern cards. And we're, both elated and happy to help each other at the end of the day. And once every week or two, we get to talking for an hour or two. It's just, it's a good way to stay connected and network. Okay. So keep that in mind. You don't always have to be the one to win. Try to help your friends out from time to time as well. And lastly, I wanted to go over grading. Now, I'm not going to go over the criteria of grading. That's going to be a whole new video that I'll do sometime in the future. I imagine that will take forever. But this is how I look at grading. If it's modern, it's only going to be worth your time to grade it and your money if it 10s out. So if you don't think it's going to get a 10, if you see a blemish, if you see a white corner, if you see a print line on the back and it's modern, 99% of the time it's not worth sending in. It's just not. PSA 9 modern cards are worth the same as vintage, or not vintage, the same as raw cards on TCG Player. So If it's modern, you need to figure out what the criteria is for 10s. You need to be confident in it, and then go ahead and send it off. Vintage is a different ballgame when it comes to grading. Again, this is a topic for a different video, so we'll skip over that. Ultimately, though, guys, finding cards for market price, you don't even have to get them at the 70% margin that I was just talking about that I buy stuff for quick flipping. If I find a card that I know that I can grade and make a profit off of, oftentimes I buy it at market or near market. So, for example, if you find a card that is $40 and you put $15 into it for the grading fee, and it's worth $100 in a PSA 10, well, you just made 45 bucks, right? Because you got 55 into it. It's now worth 100. You made $45, or you increased the value of your collection by 45 bucks. Not a bad gig at all. So figuring out grading is another great way in order to increase the value of your collection. You don't want to do this in mass quantities until you know what you're doing, though, because you can lose a lot of money. All of us that have done this for any amounts of time have lost several $100s on one grading submission because we weren't paying attention and sent in the wrong cards. Or we got a grader that was in a bad mood and it should have 10'd out and didn't because he didn't want to give the 10 that day, he or she. So grading it's another animal. It's worth it if you know what you're doing and are willing to take the risk. But it's another great way to increase the value of your collection. There are a million ways to do this, guys. So much more than what I can go over in this video that's already coming up on 30 minutes. So I'm going to cut it here, but what I can tell you is these are some of the steps that I took whenever I first got into reselling in order to increase the value of that collection. So if you've enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate any likes, comments, and subscriptions that you may want to float my way. They're free. For the next video or ones coming up, you can expect to see some openings of Terrestrial Festival. I picked up 2 boxes. I'm super excited to open them. We did open 2 about a month ago. Did okay, but we are hoping for either the Sylveon or the Umbreons in either of these boxes. So we'll see what happens. If you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy either of these right here. Until next time, guys, I appreciate your support, and we will see you on the next episode of Gocher's Cards. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Pikachu.